Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief. Today we're going to be talking about the absurd reaction of the world to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what its next plans are, and what we should be doing. And of course, we're going to be discussing it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. And as per usual, please leave your thoughts, questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, because don't be shy, and I love reading it. Let's go. One of the first things that I want to mention is that The Economist has put out a list of the most livable cities in the world and the least livable cities in the world. Kyiv, for the third year in a row, has made it into the top 10 least livable cities in the world. Now, normally they're ranked on infrastructure, safety, healthcare, walkability, yada yada yada. Our healthcare is great. We have pretty good infrastructure here. So why is Kyiv in the bottom 10 3 years in a row? Well, because it is quite unlivable when there are missile and drone strikes in the city every other night, and you could literally be killed in your sleep in your own apartment. Kyiv is the least livable city, according to The Economist, because of the Russian airstrikes. And that's all you should know about what Russia has been doing to Ukraine. Meanwhile, all of this is happening. The sanctions on Russia are being pushed to the side. The conversation about Russia being the aggressor is being pushed to the side by the US mostly. There are countries that are stepping up in Europe, and Canada is stepping up quite a bit. But that isn't enough because the US is, in fact, emboldening Putin and has been emboldening Putin quite significantly. A United States citizen has died in an airstrike on Kyiv that happened the other day, and the US condemned the situation in Ukraine. The US didn't condemn Russia, they condemned the airstrikes. You know, the airstrikes that launched themselves. But I digress. Russia continues returning Ukrainian POWs in pieces, and by that I mean it's going to take years to identify some of the POWs or some of the bodies of the POWs that Russia has returned to Ukraine, because their remains are dismembered. Some of them are in absolutely different body bags, scattered. Some of them include random remains of Russian soldiers that Russia just so gracefully included with our own. And in general, why are there so many dismembered bodies of Ukrainian soldiers in Russian captivity? You would think that maybe those are all of the bodies of the soldiers that Russia collects on the battlefield, but in fact, those are not. In a lot of cases, those bodies are dismembered POWs that Russia has tortured. A lot of these bodies are missing organs, specifically so that Ukraine couldn't identify torture and deliberate massacre as the cause for the end of their life, rather than whichever reason Russia lists on the death certificate, aka a sudden heart attack or a sudden death for no reason. And do you hear about that on the news? You don't, because no one necessarily talks about it, and it's become so routine and become so normal that it isn't making it anywhere on the news. Russia is trying to exchange kidnapped Ukrainian children, as I mentioned in the previous episode, for Russian POWs. And no one's talking about that. Russia is admitting on the world stage that it kidnapped Ukrainian children, and there is not a peep anywhere. No one's talking about it. Recently, Russian president slash dictator slash terrorist said that the airstrikes on Kyiv on the 17th were accomplished all of their goals and hit all of the objects they were supposed to hit. They were targeting military production infrastructure, not civilian buildings. Let me remind you that on June 17th, the airstrikes actually resulted in 21 civilians being dead and over 100 injured because there was a drone that flew into the building, into a civilian building, no military infrastructure there. There was a missile that ruined a whole section of another civilian building, and there were plenty more civilian buildings that were targeted and hit that night, and plenty more civilians that have suffered. We have all likely seen the video of the two parents waiting to see if their son would be taken out of the rubble alive. And then at the end of the day, after more than 12 desperate hours, their son was pulled out from underneath the rubble, his body. There was no military infrastructure in the area. Those were regular sleeping neighborhoods with residential buildings. And Russia has the audacity to say that it did reach all of its targets. So they were targeting specifically these buildings, as they have admitted that the coordinates were right and they did hit everything they were aiming to hit. They're just saying, as per usual, that these are military objects. Please tell me, how are these military objects? There are images all over the world of people being taken out from under the rubble. There are images all over the world of what had happened to the building. It folded. It literally folded from impact of the missile. And you can see that it's just a residential building. Where was the military infrastructure there? In one of the apartments? There was no military infrastructure in that building. There were just civilians, 21 of whom are now dead, and over 100 are injured. Russia has been targeting malls in Zaporizhia. There is horrendous footage from the city showing how in the past couple of weeks, some of the most impressive and destructive strikes from the Russian Federation have been on malls. Now, malls are also not military infrastructure. What malls are, they are places of large gatherings of civilians. So striking them is designed to produce a result of as many civilian victims as possible. Now, another thing that these strikes have resulted in, specifically in Kyiv and Odessa, is about 20 Ukrainian brands, and I mean clothing brands, have lost their production, lost their factories, lost their inventory, lost their storage facilities, because Russia targeted a lot of warehouse areas as well. And I'm assuming that that is specifically to say, hey, we are targeting military infrastructure, look at all of these warehouses. But in reality, the areas they targeted were actually commercial areas where most of the warehouses belong to Ukrainian fashion brands. A couple of Ukrainian brands, such as a shoe brand, Khvoya, lost their entire production, as in a missile struck directly into the building where they were producing their shoes. The Lace is another Ukrainian brand, which is clothing, who lost their, when I say factory, I don't actually mean factory, because these are small businesses where everything is done by hand in little warehouses and little rooms where people actually work and sew things. So that's what happened to the Lace. Their production room with all of their sewing machines and all of their fabrics and all of their storage was completely destroyed. And about 18 other brands suffered from that too. I'm sorry, at the moment I can't produce the names because I simply just don't remember them, as they're not the brands I have ever shopped at, but I do remember these. It struck me because Khvoya, for instance, I was going to a wedding and I ordered shoes from them for this wedding. And they called me on the morning after the strike and they were like, "Hi, you are so lucky because your shoes arrived to our store yesterday, but everything else today was destroyed and we don't have a warehouse anymore. So if your shoes were scheduled to be delivered today, then they wouldn't have made it, but yay, they did." And my reaction was like, "Are you okay? Like, do you need to be open today? Like, it's fine. It's okay if I don't get the shoes." But these brands continue working. They continue doing things. They continue renewing things. Most of the founders of the brands who lost everything are opening fundraisers not to restore their business, but for drones and for support for the military. And that's what Ukraine is doing. And that's what's happening in Ukraine every single day. You might wonder why I'm listing all of these things. It's because I feel like whatever makes it on the news makes it seem like it's happening from time to time. It's not happening from time to time. It's happening every single day. Every day there is a different Ukrainian city that suffers mass casualties, whether it be in infrastructure, whether it be in electricity, whether it be in civilians, whether it be in production, whether it be economically. Russia targets us every day. I see people freaking out about strikes on Israel, strikes on Iran, the things that are happening in the Middle East. And I'm not taking away from that. It's horrendous. But people are acting as if what's happening in Ukraine is different. They're like, look at the sky over Iran tonight. Look at the sky over Israel. These are all missiles from Iran. The comparison here is there were 100 drones heading towards Israel in 3 countries engaged their aviation. There are 400 drones heading towards Kyiv every other night, and no one beeps, no one peeps, and no one blinks an eye. And then we end up not condemning Russia, and we end up thinking that Ukraine is exaggerating. Ukraine needs too much, wants too much, and is asking for too much. Meanwhile, all of these actions are only emboldening Russia and posing an actual threat to the European Union. Because we have been saying this for a while, there is going to be a country that's next. And the same way as Russia was building up troops on the border with Ukraine and no one was taking it seriously and no one thought they would attack, do take it seriously this time, because Russia is building up a garrison for artillery brigades near the Finnish border and increasing its military equipment presence. And they have been doing that for a while, but satellite imagery shows that they're really building up forces and troops. Now, a lot of military experts will say, well, Russia doesn't have the strength to attack, Russia is too tied up in Ukraine, there is too much happening. But Russia doesn't care. Russia doesn't care to send all of their troops and all of their men there just to prove a point, just to create a distraction, just to create a diversion, just to kill more people. It's like, what would the objective be? They can't take the territory. They can take a couple of villages. They can take a little bit of territory. They can murder a lot of people. And that would fulfill their objective, because their objective is terror. According to Finnish broadcaster Yle, large-scale construction began last winter in the closed military town of Lubcha-Savina, part of Kandalaksha in Russia-Murmansk region. Satellite images show a 1.4-kilometer stretch of forest cleared, an extensive groundwork underway. The Murmansk Regional Administration confirmed that the site is being developed for a new artillery brigade and its personnel, with plans to also house part of the engineering brigade. Additional military buildup is visible on the Karelian Isthmus, about 70 kilometers from the Finnish border. New equipment has been spotted in the Saperna garrison. Meanwhile, Russia is conducting military exercises in Petrozavodsk, the largest city in the Republic of Karelia, which is what is very close to Finland. Actually, there are territories close to Finland that Russia had already taken from Finland in a war decades ago. All of these things are happening. Russia is clearly demonstrating to the world that they're not defending themselves. Russia is clearly, not even demonstrating, they're saying it, right? They're building up garrisons, they're continuously striking civilian neighborhoods. They want more territory in Ukraine, territory that didn't even come into any sort of talks or any sort of reasoning for the invasion when Russia initially started in 2022 or 2014. And we're still saying that Russia wants to negotiate. We're sending American representatives like Kellogg to Belarus to speak to Lukashenko for I don't know what reason. You know, watching the news has become not even disappointing. Like, this is not the emotion that I want to tell you I experience when I watch the news. It has become surreal, and I genuinely feel like we're living in the Matrix. Because all of these events happen, the G7 happens, and Trump continuously keeps saying, oh, well, we will see if we impose sanctions. If Putin does something bad, we'll impose sanctions. Putin blows up a building full of civilians, an American citizen dies, that's not good enough. Putin blows up another civilian building, that's not enough. Putin continuously keeps hitting and targeting Kyiv and residential areas of Kyiv, and Kyiv becomes the least livable city on the planet in 3 years in a row. That's not enough. No matter what he does, it's not enough. Now, there is a war with Iran that the US wants to enter. Even though Trump was saying on Twitter when Obama was president so many times that Obama is going to start a war with Iran to deflect and get reelected because he can't negotiate and he's so bad. And now he's doing the same thing. And honestly, the world's reaction to Russia is not just inadequate, it's absurd. The reaction to what's happening is absurd. I don't expect a lot from the United States because I'm very well aware of what this administration is like. But Europe needs to wake up because it's very little, very slow, and very late. And at this point, we in Ukraine, we believe that we're just going to have to face a lot worse very soon, and it's going to be a very tough summer and a very tough fall, and no one's going to help us. Because the things that need to be done in the military economy time, not in the, oh, well, this bad thing happened, so let us ramp up support for one time. Guys, it's not time to be slow. It's time to act. Not yesterday, not a week ago, not a month ago, 2 years ago. We're 2 years too late. We have 2 years to make up for. We need action. And this action is for all of us because I don't know how people still don't understand. This is not Ukraine's war with Russia. This is the war for the world order. Because if Russia gets away with what they're doing, and they are getting away with it, then all of the agreements, all of the treaties, all of the alliances, all of the organizations, all of the monetary organizations, all of the world order that we have agreed upon after World War II means nothing. It's meaningless because none of these agreements, none of these non-proliferations have been adhered to. So what was the point? What was the point? After World War II, we agreed on a world without mass destruction and on a world without mass civilian casualties because an imperialist wants land. We agreed that we're past it. We're not. And that's all I have for you for today, unfortunately or fortunately. Please do take my words seriously and think about them. And if you enjoyed this episode, do subscribe to this channel, send this episode to a friend, turn on your notifications, like this episode, and please leave me your thoughts, questions, suggestions, or anything in your mind in the comments down below. I read all of it. I highly appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.